Hello and welcome to the Gonzales Mitchell Show. I'm Clay Mitchell.
And I'm Patrick Gonzales.
And Patrick, I'm here today to talk to you about your new statewide poll that was just released. I read everything this morning. Uh, some of it was shocking to me. And I think there was an anomaly in your history of polling that showed up as to President Trump and Elon Musk. And we'll get to that.
Yeah, and Clay, just my poll has shocked people for decades, so don't be surprised.
Well, let's start off with Governor Moore, who in January enjoyed a very comfortable approval rating. And over the past 2 months, we've had legislative session, we have budget problems, there's the electricity crisis swirling around, and that's taken some damage to his approvals, has it not?
It has. In January, 61% approved of the job Governor Moore was doing, and 28% disapproved. Today, that is down, and that is a plus 33 positive margin.
Right.
61 minus 28. Okay, today, 55% approved and 36% disapproved. So his disapproved jumped 8 points and his approved dropped six for now a net plus positive of 19, which is still not horrible, but it certainly isn't what it was 2 months ago. And the trend for the last year has been the trajectory has been going down. That's not good.
Now we're a majority Democratic Party state. I see that you word it as a creditable 83% approve of the governor's job and how he's doing. Uh, that hasn't changed that much, has it?
No, it hasn't. And if you do the math in Maryland, Clay, if a Democratic nominee in a statewide election gets 90% of Democrats, well, you're there. I mean, yeah, you got to pick up 5% of Republicans, and you only need 25% of independents, which anybody's going to get. So he's not in what you would describe yet, or what I would describe yet, as the political danger zone because it is Maryland. However, the trajectory is what is important right now. And then we have to see how the next 3 weeks goes,
Hmm.
i.e., the resolution of this deficit problem and this
Right.
mandated $10 billion over the next 3 years issue, and then how that the fallout of that for the next 9 months or so, leading into next year's election. And right now, that's anybody's guess.
Now, the independents, this not shocked me, but surprised me that his approval ratings with them actually went down, where, uh, as you put it in your report, he's now underwater. Could you
Yeah,
talk
and
a bit about, the background on that?
yeah, in January, 53% approved of the job he was doing. So a majority approved. Today, that number among independents is only 34%, and 42% of independents disapprove. So he's, that's not good because um, as go independents, sometimes they're the leading indicator on a trend. And we saw again, he was for the first year and a half or so, he was able to get actually soft support from Republicans, which is pretty good, and that's certainly a good indicator. Well, now we've
Right.
seen that go away. We've seen the numbers with independents shift. And if that continues, you are going to see in the future a drop in support from Democrats. And that's when potentially the political problems begin.
Not to put you on the spot, but do you have an idea as to how large of a voting bloc in a general election, quote unquote, independents are?
Nobody puts Patrick in a corner, so don't you worry about it. Independents in an election in Maryland are 20% of the vote. So, and in a race where, but the bottom line always is a Republican to be competitive in a statewide election has to start thinking in terms of capturing 30% of the Democratic vote. And if that dynamic comes into play, all bets are off. And that 20% of independents, that 20% that independents comprise, becomes very, very important.
Based on the numbers and the details of your report, I don't see a generic Republican candidate winning a general election against Wes Moore. What are your thoughts?
Right now, totally agree, but it's the world's going to look very different a year from now. How that is, I don't know. But whenever I'm feeling a little anxious, Clay, and I'm kind of nervous about something, I kind of harken back to some good old advice somebody gave me because it's stuck in my brain, which is Patrick, don't get too uptight because what's in play right now ain't going to be in play a year from now, sometimes
Right.
a month from now, sometimes a day from now. So you just kind of keep it cool. So I am very hesitant to predict where things are going to be a year from now. And I can't predict the future, but I can predict the past. And for Governor Moore, the past year politically has seen his approval on a downward trajectory. Will it flatten off? If it flattens off, he's not going to be beat. If it starts to rise a little, he's not going to be beat. But if it continues like Martin O'Malley's did a dozen years ago and continues, that's when the problems potentially start.
I think this poll, if it does show a trend that Governor Moore should pay attention to, I see this as as maybe a positive light where more attention by the legislative leadership will be paid to what is causing these numbers to glide down. And as we discussed earlier, that's the electricity problem and balancing the budget via taxes and cost shifting to the counties. I think the electorate is going to pay attention to that, especially after session and when they become implemented. And they have to cure that problem in order to arrest whatever downward trend there is. So if I was the advisor to the governor and to the legislative leadership, I'd say you have to step with what's going on out there in the ether. You have to pay more attention to that and modify what you're doing. But that's just an Eastern Shore guy talking. But hopefully this will help with sending a signal out that more really needs to be done versus just raising taxes.
No, and Clay, the governor is a very likable fella. Not as likable as me, but no one is. He's a good
He
looking
is.
fella. Not not as
He
good looking
is.
as me, but few are. Okay, so that's not his issue. The governor and I have been blessed with that end. Now, this is the part he's got to worry about, which is reality. And one of my observations of the Democratic Party writ large over the last, well, certainly 4 years, is they do not seem on important things to be tethered to reality. And the reality, indisputably, in Maryland today is people are feeling dispirited. They're not comfortable. They're not happy. 41% say the state's moving in the right direction. 50% say wrong direction. Only 5% rate their own and family economic conditions as excellent. 37 pretty good for a total of 42%, whereas 40% rated only fair and 18% rated poor for a total
Mhm.
of 58% fair or poor. That's reality. That's not good for any incumbent. On top
Is
of
that
that,
go ahead.
on top of that, 57% of voters in this survey said that their electric bill, their monthly electric bill, has gone up very much in the last year. Another 19% say it's somewhat higher, for a total of 3 out of 4 Marylanders say their electric bill over the last 12 months has risen. You like my special effects? And
Yes, I do.
57% across the board say they are very, very, that's an important word, concerned about this rise in their electric bill. That is an issue that you can't happy talk your way through.
I think the zeitgeist that's out there, the dispiritedness, so to speak, is also compounded by what's going on at the federal level. The federal layoffs, especially disproportionately, impact Maryland, and when those start to increase, and I think they are, that's going to further compound a feeling of, to borrow a phrase from President Carter, a malaise setting over.
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
saw the other
Yeah.
day, I think it was in the Baltimore Banner, that President Bill Ferguson said, "We may have a Maryland recession," and some of that's self-inflicted, some of it's not. They can't control what goes on in Washington, but until that feeling of the good feelings come back, I think the trajectory of the downward trend is going to continue, at least in the medium term. That's not to say that things can't turn around this fall or early next year, but I feel it just based on my gut and not pointing to any other empirical evidence other than your poll, that this is something that's going to continue for a little while.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I love it when you say words like zeitgeist. It makes me tingle inside. And but you actually accurately described what Marylanders are feeling. Dispirited, disheartened, I think are accurate descriptions kind of across the board. Typically, Clay, as you well know in Maryland, when there's an issue, it's usually driven, it's usually a partisan issue driven sharp by party. 90% of Dems will support it, and 90% of Republicans will oppose it, or 90% of Republicans will support it, and 90% of Dems. This one's more just general. That this rise in electric bills isn't just affecting Democrats or Republicans, it's across the board. This malaise that you described, that and it takes us back to our days, brother. Remember the late 70s? Jimmy Carter, he's putting love back in government. And as a politician, it was probably a mistake. Because a politician, a leader's job is to get up and rouse the troops. I
Right.
think he went before. I don't mind getting before and describing Marylanders today as being what I would call in a malaise, because that's what they are. Now, if I'm the leader, then I've got to talk in terms of positive thinking. And I'm always a positive thinker. But from as an object or observer, that's exactly where the state is. And disheartened, dispirited, voters in a malaise typically reflexively will take that out on incumbents. So that's one more element where the governor possibly might not even be in any way connected to being related to the issue, but sometimes incumbents bear the brunt of the frustration of voters. So we'll see how it shakes out. But I'm telling you, we got a situation here. We've got a Maryland Constitution that mandates that the budget is balanced each year. And we've got a legislative issue passed several years ago mandating that $10 billion is
Hmm.
spent on public education over the next 3 years. You can't work your way around. Somehow something has to be done to meet those two requirements. You either slash everything else in the budget, you either reorganize the blueprint legislation from several years ago, or you raise taxes. And when they talk about things that really perhaps can generate some money, like a 2.5% business to business tax, uh, I'm not sure any politician, even in Maryland or Massachusetts or California, even want to suffer the slings and arrows, the consequences of doing that. I mean, we'll see. I don't know what they're going to do, but
I,
it could
I'm
be.
just going to say, to his credit, Governor Moore tried to modify or delay part of the implementation of the Kerwin plan, and within 5 seconds, that was just shoved aside by the legislature. So I do give him some credit for that, and maybe that'll be readdressed, meeting the budget. I smell a special session. I don't know about you, but that's a prediction that
Oh,
I'll have this summer or
I got. I
September.
bet you. I bet you $1,000 there's a special session by September. That's because they're kicking the can down. They're not. They're
Yeah.
If they were seriously addressing what's going on, we'd get a sense of it and we'd know it. They're not. And one of the issues is I don't know the percentage. A lot of current elected legislators, they're in districts. They could go out and murder people and they'd be reelected because it's such a heavily partisan district.
Right. Right.
But what that kind of guarantee, that kind of, sort of political security creates sometimes is something akin to what I would describe LIV in golf as doing. When you offer a golfer $100 million guaranteed, you lose a whole lot of motivation, a whole lot of
Yeah.
incentive to think and to play well. And I think we've
Yeah.
seen that bear out on that tour. And in the same way, when a politician, an elected official, is almost guaranteed, and in their mind they are guaranteed reelection no matter what, that doesn't necessarily produce some of the best reasoning and thinking. And so we're going to see how this plays out.
Now, setting aside a downward trend here in the state, the dreams of the national GOP turning Maryland red seems to be out the window, according to your findings on the approvals of both President Trump and Elon Musk. Please discuss, sir.
Well, when we asked, do you approve or disapprove of the job President Trump is doing, 36 approve, 62 disapprove. And when we asked, do you approve or disapprove of the job Elon Musk is doing, heading up the Department of Government Efficiency, a mere 30% approve and 66% disapprove. So, yes, right now, replicating what hasn't been done in 37 years. 1988, George Herbert Hoover Bush carried Maryland over that dingaling, Mike Dukakis, by a fraction of a vote. Do I have it about right? Yeah, about that much.
Yeah, it's
It
about
was a
right.
very close. That's about right. Now, Ronald Reagan, that great American in '84, carried the state pretty good, but that was just a unique year. So, yes, right now, the national GOP's hopes of turning Maryland red in the next presidential election are, but um, the other element, and this is where Elon Musk comes into play,
Right.
um, is the whole government efficiency thing involves a whole lot of job cutting. I heard today they just slashed 50% of the employees at the Department of Education, many of whom
Wow.
probably live in Maryland. So
Sure.
those cuts are going to have a direct impact on the whole tax and government structure of Maryland. Again, which is going to fall at the doorstep of Governor Moore and trying to figure out ways to deal with it on top of everything else he has to deal with.
Deep in your numbers, that there's something that you said is seldom seen when you talk about the disapproval numbers has to do with the strongly disapprovals. What are your
Yeah.
findings? What are your findings on that?
Clay, when you do something and you crosstab it, and you could crosstab by party or race or gender, you look for good trends. So 80% is something good. 90% you're saying, "Jeezy peasy." When we asked Maryland voters approve or disapprove of Donald Trump, and we asked, and then is that strong approve or somewhat approve? And the same with Elon Musk. What we found when we crossed Trump's name ID with Musk's name ID was that 98% of those who strongly disapprove of the job Donald Trump is doing as president
Hmm.
strongly disapprove of the job Elon Musk is doing heading up Doge. Now, people would say, oh, that seems logical. No, no, not in polling. Yeah, I mean, 90. If it had been 90%, it would have got my 98%. We're talking about a
8%.
cell of hundreds and hundreds of respondents. So my interpretation on that is because I
Mhm.
guarantee you, uh, a large percentage of the people that do not like and disapprove of the job Elon Musk is doing couldn't pick him out of a lineup. Okay. It's a reflexive, sort of emotional. Oh, yeah, he's
A
Trump. I
zeitgeist.
hate
It's a
Trump. I hate.
zeitgeist.
It's
It's
a
a zeitgeist.
zeitgeist. It might even be a gestalt. God bless you. And and so it was one of those numbers. And I remember when Barack Obama was president, I do a poll and I'd ask a question about Obama, and it might be who would you vote for, whatever, and I'd get like 96% of African Americans to say they were supporting Barack Obama. Well, again, people would hear that and say, okay, that seems logical, and it might be logical in the sense that he ends up on election day with 96%, but you never did poll. I don't care, it would end up 80, 85. You never get in polling that because he's always sort of that uh,
Right.
more casual, sitting back saying, yeah, I'll think about it. So when you see numbers like that, something is going on. And
Yeah.
right now, a lot of emotion is driving voter attitude with that stuff in Maryland.
Well, my friend, I will look for you and your commentary in other media outlets such as the radio and the television. I say that like an old guy because I am.
Well, thank you.
And
Well, thank you.
you're all over the news today, my friend. I just, it's an honor to know you,
Well,
Patrick.
Well, as long as ICE can't track me down and capture me and deport me, I'm all right. So
All right, Patrick, the clock on the wall says it's time to say goodbye, Patrick.
goodbye, Patrick.